and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 1988 supernatural horror and third entry into the original Poltergeist franchise, Poltergeist III, Kane Takes Chicago, as directed this time around by Sherman. Now, I am only kidding about the Kane Takes Chicago bit, just paying homage to some of those other 80s movies created in a similar vein, if you know which ones I mean, and indeed paying some sarcasm to the kind of movie this kind of actually turns out to be. So, Poltergeist III follows Carol Ann, as played once again by Heather O'Rourke, who had been the main focus of the supernatural entities in the first two movies, being sensitive to the world beyond and sought after by a relentless, malevolent force that wished to take her for their own devices. Set sometime after the events of the second movie, Carol Ann, now living with her aunt and uncle in a newly developed, well, still being developed, skyscraper in Chicago, Illinois, after being sent away to attend a school for gifted children by her parents, is trying to put the horrifying events that transpired over the last few years behind her. However, unbeknownst to Carol Ann and her aunt's family, the spirits have followed her to Chicago, presumably for a vacation, and proceed once again to seek to take Carol Ann to show them the way into the light, terrorising the skyscraper in the process. Led by the insatiable Reverend Henry Kane, the main antagonist as introduced in the second movie as the personification of the Beast from the first movie, this time around as played by Nathan Davis, the spirits manifest themselves within an alternative dimension, utilising the mirrors and reflective surfaces of the skyscraper to punch their way through into our world. Once again, those around Carol Ann must confront their fears and dig deep into the love they have for each other in order to defeat Kane and bring back their family before it's too late. So, like the other entries in this franchise today, this next instalment was also another which terrified me as a child. The whole new dimension added using mirrors was absolutely fantastic and meant that a whole new horror now lurked for me around every corner. And indeed every night when I brushed my teeth. And that's before I have to even get into an elevator with mirrors furnishing the inside, especially those with mirrors at either side, which make that kind of reflective effect where reflections seem to go on forever and ever. Well, in actual fact, they actually do, to infinity, but we'll leave that for another day and possibly another channel. That's a creepy effect in itself anyway, you know, without the science involved, without having the memory of this film lurking in the shadows as well, just on its own. Even to this day, I have to check behind me after looking in a mirror to make sure I am the only one there, and indeed ensure my reflection doesn't start moving on its own accord. You know, so the legacy of this film's memory has absolutely had a profound effect on my outlook to many things, you know, from a horror perspective. I think the whole series has, for sure. It's certainly been iconic for me, but unfortunately, what I remember as a child, chilling as those memories are, and indeed the nostalgia that I actually have for this film, doesn't remove the fact that this film is, all in all, pretty dire. The first thing that hits you is the music. Instantly, the film lets you know this is not going to come anywhere close to the previous two entries in the franchise. Jerry Goldsmith's ingenious and haunting themes for the first movie, and indeed, to some extent, his creativity in the second, have been replaced by a score by Joe Renzetti, which sadly, I have to say, sounds like somebody's hacked it out on their first childhood keyboard. And this really kind of spoils the experience for me. I think if the music had more edge, more presence, kind of more of an atmosphere, then this would have kind of propped up the rest of the film. And perhaps would have kind of created much, much more of a chilling experience. Now, the film itself has some fantastically cool concepts. I mean, the world within mirrors was an ingenious idea and itself extremely eerie, you know? I'm not entirely sure what it kind of linked into what it actually had to do with the Poltergeist mythology and the ice effects that are kind of used to great effect too. But as a kind of core horror concepts, they do work exceedingly well to kind of add this kind of unique twist to the story once again, and bring an engaging element that allowed for some playful scenes and trickery to unfold within. From what I actually understand, the majority of the effects in the movie were also practically done, including one extremely daring stunt outside of the skyscraper, which was indeed filmed for real, as far as I believe. I mean, to make some of those shots work with the mirrors would have been quite tricky in itself, and technically, in this context, the movie certainly continues to command my admiration. I mean, it tries, and an effort has certainly been made to give the audience something unique. So, kudos for that, you know? However, as an entry into the Poltergeist franchise, I think it lost its way, and it's sad that the legacy kind of came to this, to be honest. I've always been bemused as to why Carol Ann's family would kind of pack her off to live with somebody else, based on the relationship in the first and the second movies and all that, that the family had been through. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to me, and the new family just seems so fractured. 1 minute, her aunt, as played by Nancy Allen, is calling Carol Ann a little brat and looking to ditch her in the skyscraper at the first opportunity, leaving her to Kane's clutches. The next, and I mean literally the next, she's confessing her underlying love for Carol Ann. And indeed, Kane, this time around, just doesn't hold the same kind of presence, being more of a creepy old man in a hat than kind of this demonic presence. He's even a little mixed up, forgetful in fact, I think, as now he wants Carol Ann to show him the light. Haven't we just spent the last 2 movies having the Beast trying to keep his followers from going into the light? Now here, he just comes across as yet another bemused spirit to me. Not the evil presence that has terrified, More like the kind of person you would want to avoid in a kid's playground, if you know what I mean. More awkward feeling than terrifying. To be fair, even Carol Ann seems more blasé about him this time around, opting to stay home alone even after seeing his reflection for the best part of a day, and indeed after witnessing him cleaning her windows. That's his new job. It is all just a little bit odd, and I could go on, It is a shame that they couldn't have got more of the original cast to return. I mean, some sadly they couldn't, but they don't kind of make good use of those that they have, not by far. Heather O'Rourke was certainly coming into her own here, and once again brings Carol Ann to life, but her performance can't kind of fight past the poor dialogue that's actually at work here. Even the usually impeccable, Zelda Rubinstein playing the psychic Tangina Barnes, reprising the role from the first 2 movies, seems to be getting lost in her own contradictory mysticisms here, Despite this, there are still some genuinely creepy moments, mostly, as I have said, connected with the use of the mirrors and the alternative dimension that they represent. The part that I didn't think would work so well, the cool Hollywood trope of if you don't know where to take a story, just stick them in a tower block, actually does play its part in adding an interesting slant and some great, and some if often missed, opportunities. The film actually also sets off pretty quickly, but somehow it does kind of still feel a bit sluggish. I mean, I think perhaps although that the stakes are as high as they ever have been, they just don't feel that way. Even Carol Ann has a very nonchalant attitude towards it all, and the family dynamic that was so prevalent and pivotal in the first 2 movies is completely absent here. Overall, this movie still holds plenty of nostalgic value for me, and it is still extremely watchable, for me, at least. It's not totally trash, but it's still a very disappointing way to kind of finish off the original Poltergeist legacy, with a very lacklustre and basic entry that would be fairly generic if it wasn't for the inclusion of the mirror dimension. Amazing how, in the relatively short space in time which had kind of passed since the first movie had been released, in Hollywood terms, just how this legacy actually did dissolve. There are still some spooky moments to be had, some tacky ones too, and spooky is kind of the word I would use. This film is not terrifying by any stretch of the imagination. Creepy perhaps, but not very atmospheric. The best way to kind of perhaps describe it is more like a Halloween spook house, kind of like taking a ride on a ghost train in a travelling fair, if you know the kind of ride that I mean, So that brings me to the end of this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst Movie Talk. Definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.